Yeah, touch up on this. So she only got one life, can't stay on the job side. Make a memory for a lifetime that collapse. Yeah, come on baby, knock my back with two eyes. She don't get feelings, she gets flights. So she coming back to the sunshine paradise. Lauren said, fall out in New York City. Says she coming home cause she must have to play. Lauren said, go out in New York City. Says she coming home cause she must have to play. It's a yes, she falling. He that didn't run away. Lauren coming home for carnival. He that didn't run away. This woman looks like she body bad. He that didn't run away.
Yes, good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Lauren coming home for Carnival. Yes, that was Michael Teja, the road match winner. Yes, and tonight we have the conversation with the Prime Minister. Spread the word. We are live and we will be broadcasting that live to you very soon at 8 o'clock when the Prime Minister starts. But we just want to touch on one or two things as we go along. Now, this is Bounce Up Central. Yes, Bounce Up Central on bounceup.com. Share the live, and let people know that we are live right here on bounceup.central.com. Now, you have the opportunity to chat in the chat room also. So you will have that opportunity to do your chatting and, you know, meet up with your friends, bounce up with everybody that you want to deal with. So I want to talk about this thing here called the child trafficking as time is going upon us. And the Prime Minister will be broadcasting live, as I told you all, at 8 o'clock on Bounce Up Central, courtesy TTT, where we'll be taking the feed from. So here it is. We have some child trafficking things that has been happening, and it is very, very worrisome of what has been transpiring in Trinidad and Tobago, especially coming out of Venezuela, whereby some Trinidadians have been purchasing children for $6,000. Now, and it all depends on the type of child too. So it's from $6,000 plus that people are paying money for children and committing child trafficking from Venezuela to Trinidad. So here it is. These things are going on, and that is why we have something called Bosamak that we are implementing, and we are bringing to you and asking for your support and asking you for you to come and register on bounceup.com and register and let your voices be heard. When you register in bounceup.com and you go to Bosamak and you put the mark of corruption and all these different things inside of there, then we will be able to pass on that information to the relevant authorities. And also, if we do follow-ups, and we will, or if the no follow-up, if nothing is being done, then we will take the corrective measures and we will pass it on to the higher-ups. Now, I know that people are going around the place and they are saying that, how is this thing going to work? Well, it is strictly anonymous. Nobody could call you, nobody could text you anything, and you can get your information going there. So it is strictly anonymous. And we want to help in terms of dealing with the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago. So do stand by. We will be looking at the child trafficking issue, and we will be dealing with that in a subsequent podcast. Next, I want to deal with is the Immigration Department, whereby we have been busting the mark on the Immigration Department on things that have been happening, and word has been coming to the hand that another officer, yes, Bounce Up Central, Bosamak, word has been coming to hand because we're busting the mark tonight that another senior official at the Immigration Department was arrested apparently today. So we are waiting to hear what has been, well, I'm not going to say arrested, was detained in connection with the relevant misbehaving in public, and 13 other counts that another officer would have been charged for. That individual has been detained by the police of Trinidad and Tobago and right now is in police custody. So again, we want to thank the public and those colleagues who have come forward and bust the mark on those persons who are working in the office and committing corruption in the organization and trying to taint the organization in a bad light. So that is why we bring out this thing called Bossa Mark. It is strictly anonymous. Again, it is anonymous. Nobody will know who texts, who call, or anything. And this thing is based in a foreign land. So that's why it is so important that you get on board and join the fight against crime, criminality, corruption in all different forms and whatever is going on in your community. And Bossa Mark also wants to join partnership with people in the community, in the neighborhood watches, so that you who are forming neighborhood watch and you see something, you want to say something, on these miscreants who are causing problems in the community, you can now go on Bossa Mark and you can now let your voices be heard. Again, this is what is being created for you, and it is being created for everybody to take part in this thing and join the fight against the crime and these criminals in this country. We can only get this thing going if we unite as one and deal with the crime situation that is plaguing our nation as a health epidemic. So we too will be joining with the Prime Minister and the government in terms of fighting this crime, because we need to do something to quell the situation as it comes to hand. So without further ado, we have basically 10 more minutes before we go straight to the Prime Minister's conversation. So, and I want to put this thing out here. That we will be also looking tomorrow. All right, so we end the stream. Okay, so the Prime Minister is ready now. All right, so if the Prime Minister is ready, all right, so the live has ended. If the live, okay, no. So we are on standby right now for the Prime Minister, and we are going to be bossing him up. We are on a standby mode for the Prime Minister conversation with the Prime Minister, and you can do your chatting here. There will be no chat on the conversation with the Prime Minister on the government station, but you can now come to Bounce Up Central and you can chat in the live stream. So just remember, this thing is being brought to you live by Bounce Up Central, and we will be covering the Prime Minister conversation with the Prime Minister. And some of the things that we can look at asking the Prime Minister in the conversation is this whole question of this clip that has been going around, whereby people are stating that the Prime Minister is going for people this misinformation that the people are saying that the Prime Minister is going for people's finance in the banks. And we want to clear up that, and we want to make it very much clear the Prime Minister never stated that. The Prime Minister never stated that he is going to go into anybody's bank account and take anybody's money. I don't know where people are getting that from, but it is not true. And they should stop saying misinformation in the public domain. So we are going to be looking to go over to the feed very soon. And I know a lot of people are on mischief tonight. And I did get some word. Yes, I'm getting word. But Where would do? Where would do? So you can watch it live right here on Bounce Up Central. Yes, you can watch it live right here on Bounce Up Central and on the different platforms that is available right now so that you can see the conversation with the Prime Minister. But again, in this tomorrow, you will join me when I will be having I will be talking with Melba, right? I will be talking with Melba, and we will be looking at different things as we talk about different topics that is affecting every and anybody in Trinidad and Tobago. So tomorrow midday, well before midday, mid morning, you could say, we will be talking. Yes, so we are still on standby, and we are waiting for the. We are waiting for the. Yes, I like this. I like this. I like that background. So we are waiting for the Prime Minister's conversation. So for those who are putting out the information, misinformation that the Prime Minister is going for your bank account, that is not true. It is false information. And tomorrow, midday, well, not midday, mid morning, I should say, just after 10 minutes to 11, myself and Melba will be joining into that conversation, and we will be dealing with that particular matter and talking about it as time go along. So, but we want to make sure that people understand that the misinformation that is going out in the public domain is false, it is misleading. The Prime Minister is not talking about people who don't have no money, who just working. He's talking about people who just have the money just sitting in a bank, doing absolutely not one thing, and it's not generating no form of interest, and therefore, basically, it can be used to do something to generate turnovers in the economy. So you'll get a better understanding of it tomorrow, because we are pressed for time and we have decided that we're going to broadcast this thing live to you and bring this thing live to you from Bounce Up Central. Yes, Bounce Up Central, and we are going to be taking our feed. Yes, you guys are live online, but there will be no chat with the Prime Minister on the TTT feed, but you can do your chatting right here on Bounce Up Central on our platform, as well as on our various mediums that we are broadcasting right now on. We are broadcasting on Bounce Up Central YouTube page. We are on Bounce Up we have Fearless Warrior page, and we are also on Bounce Up Central, our web page. So you can go on any one of the three, and you can do your chatting right here, and you can have your conversation as we go along. But Bounce Up Central is here, and we will be doing more and more on the road lives as we continue to bring this broadcast to you. And also, you can go back and look at it for repeat broadcast right here on Bounce Up Central. So you can get it right here. So for those who are carrying out their nefarious activities, we have the thing called Bossama, and you will see in the subsequent podcast whereby I will be actually going more in detail into what Bossama is as part of our platform, whereby we have it secure, and we also want to help in dealing with the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago. So we are again waiting for the countdown to the Prime Minister as 8 o'clock is drawing nearer. So look out, people, as we now go over to the conversation with the Prime Minister by our link and our live feed off of TTT. So join me tomorrow at 10:30 with me and Melba on Bounce Up Central, Fearless Warrior, and Bounce Up YouTube. So let's go over to the conversation with the Prime Minister. Director, let's
Thank you,
go.
Pastor Sinaf. We may be seated. Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight for another installment of Conversations with the Prime Minister. We are broadcasting live from Tunapuna this evening. Be sure to include your name and the community when you come to the podium. And please allow me now to hand over to the Prime Minister.
A very good night to you, ladies and gentlemen, particularly those of you who are here with us at Exodus Spaniard, which is wide open and welcoming, and also to recognize those of you who are sharing the time with us on your various platforms, whether it's radio, television, wherever you are. It's a very pleasant evening here in Tunapuna, and I came here without too much of my own to offer you in terms of opening, because I anticipated that the Minister of Finance would have been here, and I would have been able to call on him to do what I think is useful, which is to carry on a conversation in response to an issue which is very much alive. You know, maybe I could start by indicating that one of the challenges that we face as government is trying to get the population to treat with information that is factual. I'm reading a book at the moment. It's called Attack from the Inside. And it is written by an expert politician. I think he's a politician, but certainly a public influencer in the United States, who is drawing attention to the fact that it is almost impossible nowadays to accept anything that is presented to us as information which we should have. Because the current technology allows so much opportunity for persons to feed live, truth-like information to any population, that it is possible that you could be making decisions thinking that you know what you are talking about. And even the best effort of those who have the truth, they have to put an extra effort out, maybe double the effort that has gone out with the truth, to fend off misinformation. In Trinidad and Tobago, that is already so. And therefore, I feel responsible for the population as Prime Minister to receive accurate information. But it's an uphill task to stave off misinformation. I'm hoping that the Minister of Finance will join us. He's clearly running a bit late, but I'm hoping that he will join us in some reasonable time frame, because I would like to open the floor after the Minister of Finance would have spoken tonight, because I did ask him to come here and literally carry on a conversation with you, the population, those of you who are present and those of you who would be receiving it, on this whole question of the property tax. I have listened to the debate in the Parliament, where I was present among my colleagues in the lower house. I have listened to the debate in the Senate, which ended yesterday. I've listened to government persons struggling to put the facts out there because you say it over and over and you believe that it is so obvious, it is so truthful, it is so clear, but no. I also listen to the opposition members and you wouldn't think that they know the facts based on what they are saying in the parliament and to the population. I listen to independent members who I think would be unbiased arbiters, and some of the statements that they were making too caused me to wonder whether they too are not being taken in and taken up by the deliberate misinformation that is put out there. Until the Minister of Finance comes, let me just say a little bit about that because I don't want to take the subject just in case he shows up. In the event that he doesn't show up, I can come back to it later. But let me just say something to you. In fact, I think I better leave it until I hope the Minister of Finance will turn up. But suffice it to say that it is quite incomprehensible that the conversation in the country today could be as though there is a new tax that is being levied by this government. It is not. This tax has been around throughout my lifetime. I inherited my grandfather's property when I was 17 years old. I got a deed for a property in Mason Hall, Tobago, which was my grandfather's property. He bought that property for $80. Took him 2 years to pay for it. But after 2 years, he got a deed. I wasn't born yet. When I was 17 years old, obviously the land was worth a whole lot more, but I inherited it. And the tax on that land was 2.5 acres of land, residential property, with a bit of farming possibility on it. The tax on that property, when I inherited it, was $1.44 for the year. But that was what $1.44 meant at the time. I'm talking here about 1967. 1967. The same property is worth a whole lot more today. And things being relative, if you compare the value of the property today with the value at the time when I inherited it, you really have a requirement to compare the $1.44 with what is required to be paid today. But the one thing that remains constant is the model that is used to arrive at the tax. That model is you look at the value of the property and have a relationship between the value and the tax. So if the property is deemed to be very valuable, the tax would be on the higher end. If the property is deemed to be simple and not of any extraordinary value, then the tax would be at the bottom, which is where this $1.44 came in, because it was property that was not developed in any superior way, and the land value at that time was very low. So when today there is an encouragement of persons to think that, and to repeat in places of discussion in the population, that the government is coming with some tax that the government has dreamed up. And oh, what about this value of my property that I worked so hard to get? And why am I being penalized because my property has a higher value? These are ridiculous arguments. It is the same arrangement that applied when the $1.44 was required. A relationship between the tax and the value of the land. It is now 2023 as compared to 1967. And you still have some people saying, well, I am paying $200 and therefore the property tax today must be a percentage of $200. So if you increase 200 by $20, I will accept that. If you increase it by 100%, I'll accept that. But the value of a property relating to the $20 tax is a different story. And I'll tell you another secret too. That earning from which I paid $1.44 was $169 a month because I was a school teacher. And my salary was $169 a month. Now, I don't know any teacher in this country who is on the payroll today who even gets an allowance that is $169. A teacher's salary in today's Trinidad and Tobago is thousands of dollars. Even the lowest level teacher is earning thousands of dollars, not anything near $169. So where you see conversations talking about the government coming to levy new tax, and of course the government is wicked and people are suffering, all of that is meant to incite the population to think that the government is doing you something wrong and therefore you ought to fight back. But what's the government doing? The government first and foremost committed to local government reform. And many of you would have heard over the years a lot of complaints and bleating, especially from opposition politicians, how backward and inoperative local government was. You would have heard about how local government couldn't cut grass in the playing field, how local government couldn't put gas in the tank of their vehicles to go and collect the garbage, how local government couldn't fix a pothole, how local government couldn't kill mosquitoes when they were eating you and spreading dengue. All of these things you were hearing all along. And this government decided that we will bring about local government reform to put our corporations in a position, in a sustainable and permanent position where those items of irritation ought to be a thing of the past, because local government would have been put in a situation that they can deal with those issues. Local government reform. I don't have to remind you that our colleagues in the parliament on the opposite side opposed the initiative of local government reform. And you have to ask yourself, how could you want progress in this country? And there is a government in office that is saying, okay, after years of thinking and talking and planning and whatnot, we are now going to carry out local government reform. How could you not support that? That is what I find astounding. What is there to oppose in doing what you yourself were saying should be done for decades? Modernizing local government. And one of the modernization is to put management structure in place so that you can get proper reporting on what local government is doing. And the reason for that, which of course equals job creation in many instances, the reason for that is to make sure that you, the population, get your reports in Parliament on time. Do you know that nowadays it's quite normal and acceptable, maybe to them, that local government bodies report sometimes 15 years after the year when the report was due? There are reports coming to the Parliament from local government bodies 10 years ago. Even if you see something that you want to interrogate, it was from 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But if you put proper management structures in place with proper personnel in a proper organization chart, and the very said Parliament insist that public servants do their jobs and report, and that the cabinet ensure that those reports come to the Parliament, then that is progress. How could you oppose that? But the real joke is we use the same template today on a tax that is on the law books, for which there were 15 years of relief, and you hear, no, it's not the right time. And it makes you wonder, when is the right time? Will there ever be a right time? At least one spokesperson yesterday reported in today's paper saying, no, it should never be. Never. So in other words, don't use that method to collect that revenue. And then, of course, another question follows. Then, what do you do? And the answer is, tax certain business people. Well, that to me is just plain foolish. Because the business sector is already taxed. And the people who are 30% as a matter of fact. And people who earn from the business sector, they get taxed from those earnings. And the profits of many of our businesses in the country support the stock exchange, where people have invested in those companies, and there's a wide ownership of the resources of the private sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And if you don't believe me, ask your officer in the unit trust. How does the unit trust pay earnings on your units? The unit trust does not conduct any business in this country, but it has hundreds of thousands of unit holders. And those unit holders look forward to getting a return on their units, because the unit trust buys shareholding into most of the profitable companies in this country. Whether it's a bank share, whether it is Massey, whether it is a significant portion of it is owned by the unit trust, which is owned by you. So when you understand that, you would want those businesses to make a profit. And they are paying taxes. And here comes the Minister of Finance. So all latecomers, please stand. And I would stop right where I was, and I would ask the Minister of Finance to go to that podium and raise for discussion what I asked him to do here. And that is after the apology.
Good evening, Prime Minister, my cabinet colleagues, other invited guests. I am deeply sorry that I am late, but I had matters of state to attend to. I'm not joking. So the Prime Minister asked me to deal with some issues tonight. One of them was to explain a few things with respect to property tax. There's so much misinformation, bad information, distortions of the truth, and outright lies that are out there in the system. And these untruths and distortions of reality are being perpetuated every day. I mean, the Prime Minister would have seen the debate in the Parliament yesterday, when we went to the Parliament to do a number of things, but everything we were doing was good and positive. We went with legislation to reduce the rate of property tax on residential properties from 3% to 2%, a 33% reduction, a 1/3 reduction. The legislation also had in it an extension of time in terms of persons who want to challenge the valuation of the annual rental value of their properties from 1 month to 6 months. It also had in it an extension of the time with respect to the sending out by the Board of Inland Revenue of the property tax notices. It also had in it a new provision where the Minister of Finance, if it is necessary, can extend the time for the payment of the tax, for the imposition of penalties and interest, and so on. If I had to describe that legislation in one phrase, it was an ease-up bill. It was designed to help. It was designed to soften the impact of property tax. And all 6 opposition MPs voted against that. So they voted against reducing the property tax from 3% to 2%. They voted against extending the time to make a complaint about your valuation from 1 month to 6 months and so on. They vote against it. They oppose it totally. And if they had the numbers, we would have been in a situation where we could not reduce the tax from 3% to 2%. That is what we had to deal with in the parliament yesterday. Mad people. But the other issues that came up, I had to listen to 6 of them talking such, I mean, I'm not in parliament. I could say the word lie. You're not allowed to say that in parliament, but not in parliament. It was a tissue and a torrent of blatant lies. Okay, thank you. One of the issues, one of the things that the opposition has been trying to frighten people with is the whole question of inheritance. Now, within the Property Tax Act, there is a provision that if a person is unable to pay property tax, and there are categories given in the law itself, you are in receipt of senior citizens pension or old age pension as they call it, or public assistance, or disability grant, or a food card, or you can demonstrate that your income is so little that you simply cannot pay the tax. You are entitled to get what is called a deferral. So the elderly person, 65 years old, just get old age pension, might live for another 10 years. The tax will be deferred for that next 10 years that they may live. Just talking averages here. When they pass away and they pass on the property to their successors, their heirs, what the opposition has been saying is that when you inherit that property from your parents, you will now have to pay all the tax that was accumulated. And if you're not a rich person or you're not wealthy or have no means, you won't be able to pay the tax that has accumulated over that 10-year period. And the government is going to come and seize your property and take it away from you. And they've been pushing that right through. That's a lie. In the Property Tax Act, there is a provision. It is Section 27. And in Section 27, it is crystal clear that if you inherit property from an elderly person or an indigent person who couldn't pay the tax, and so it was deferred and it was accumulating, you inherit that. But you too are impoverished and not well, or you have a very meager income, or for some other reason, you can demonstrate that you can't pay all of that tax that was deferred and has accumulated. The law is crystal clear. The Board of Inland Revenue will advise the president, in this particular case, it means the cabinet, that it'll be either a partial or a complete waiver of all that tax. That tax will be wiped off. So this nonsense about how when you inherit property with accumulated property tax and you can't pay, the government will seize your property. It's a lie. It's right there in the act. You can get a complete waiver. All the tax will be written off once you demonstrate that it would be hardship and you cannot pay. That's the first thing that needs to be told to everyone. The second thing is the amount of the tax. Before we reduced the percentage from 3% to 2%, and they tried to stop it, they voted against it. And they even inveigled some other people to vote against it, but it wasn't enough. We had sufficient votes and we passed it. the people at the lowest end of the spectrum, whose rental value would be somewhere in the vicinity of $1,500 a month or less, that is what their property would be assessed at, $1,500 a month or less. Their property tax would have been $486 for the year, $40 a month. Now that we've reduced it to 2%, that group of people, which is about 15% of all property owners in Trinidad and Tobago, which is about 60,000 people, they now will pay $324 per year, $26 a month. And as you go up the scale with the adjustments that we have made, you find that 2/3 of property owners in Trinidad and Tobago, 2/3, you're talking about 250,000 homeowners. Their tax will be $700 a month or less. That is the effect of what we did yesterday in the parliament. 250,000 homeowners will now attract a property tax of $700 a year, $60 a month. 250,000 people. But for some reason, there is this campaign outside there, and it is not limited to the opposition. There are people who write in the media as well, and writing all of this foolishness. Because if 250,000 people only have to pay $60 a month in property tax, that cannot be something that is going to collapse Trinidad and Tobago and everybody will be out on the street. I had to listen yesterday to somebody telling me that property tax is going to be the largest single expense that somebody will have to pay every month. I say, really? The low level is $26 a month, and almost everybody paying about $60, $70 a month. And $60 a month is going to be the largest single expense that anybody could pay? Nonsense. But that is what is outside there. And what you find is that the people who live in the higher end properties, they're the ones who make a noise. So the people who live in the most upscale areas of Trinidad and Tobago, millionaires, their tax might be $7,000 for the year, $8,000 for the year. Well, it's reduced now, so it might go down to $6,000 or $5,000 for the year, as the case may be. So these are people living in houses that are worth $5 million, $10 million, $15 million, $20 million. Their tax might be now $6,000 for the year or $500 a month. They want to pay the same tax as the person in Belmont or in Cocorite or in St. John Road right here, who will be paying a $400, a $500, or $300 a year, $25 a month, $30 a month, $40 a month. The man who lives in the most upscale areas in Trinidad, they want to pay the same tax as the man who lives right here on the Eastern Main Road. It is ridiculous. The whole point about property tax is that it's a progressive tax. The more money you have, the more assets you have, the more you pay. The bigger your house is, the more expensive it is, the more you pay. The less it is, the cheaper it is, the less you pay. It's what's called a progressive tax. So the burden is on people at the high end and not at the low end. The other piece of nonsense they have outside there is that how are they going to challenge evaluations? And it came up yesterday. Because the first thing you have to do is to write the commissioner of valuations. That's all. You can go online. There's an online portal where you can go to the valuation division and you challenge your valuation. You get a valuation. Maybe the valuation is $120,000 for a year, $10,000 a month. You don't like it. You think it's wrong. You can go online and you launch a complaint. Or you simply write the commissioner of valuations a letter. You could send that by registered post. You could deliver it to the evaluation division in Barataria. Different ways. and the commissioner has 12 months to respond to you. And they need time. Now, 12 months may be a little too long, maybe 6 months, maybe 7 months, but the commissioner of valuations needs time because you are challenging the valuation. So they'll have to have a site visit with you present, measure the whole house, look at the condition of the house, and so on. That is the only way a challenge can be done with. But there's quite a straightforward procedure and quite a long time before you take it up to the next level, to the valuation tribunal and the High Court, and so on. Someone made a suggestion yesterday, one of the few sensible things that were said, that we need to put in a support system for persons at the lowest level of the income strata who will not be able to easily challenge a valuation. Because when you're going to challenge a valuation, you have to bring a next one. So you'll have to go by a private valuator and ask for a private valuator to value your house. And then you take that and you submit that to the Commissioner of Valuations and you say, look, your valuation wrong. And then they go through the process, they measure the house, they take photographs, they check the condition and so on. So the process is quite straightforward, and the government will put in a support system, just like legal aid. Right now, if you're impoverished and you need a lawyer, you go by legal aid. So we will put in a system to assist people at the lowest end, using a means test, obviously, to determine how we're going to help them to get independent valuations in order to challenge the valuations from the Commissioner of Valuations. So when one looks at it, what is the real problem? How could paying $400 or $500 a year, $30 a month, how could that be such a catastrophe that the opposition want to burn down the country and plunge the country into chaos? What is going on? And I have come to one conclusion. It can't be the property tax. It can't be $300 a year or $400 a year or $500 a year, $30, $40, $50 a month. That can't be the reason for all this bacchanal that you're seeing in the papers, you're hearing on the radio, you're seeing on TV, all this carrying on. That cannot be the issue. It can't be the amount of tax. It has to be something else. And you see, what we have in Trinidad and Tobago today is a situation where a number of people cannot explain their wealth. You have fellas working for a small salary, but living in a mansion. You have people owning 5 and 10 and 20 properties. How did they get them? And what property tax does? And I read from an article from the IMF last night in the Parliament, because this is not unique to Trinidad and Tobago. If you are a person accustomed evading tax, you're a professional, you provide services, you charge for your services, but you take in cash, you ain't giving no bill, and you're not reporting that. You could do that unless taxman catch up with you. You could hide your income because it's invisible, but you can't hide a house. It's right in front of your face. So that it's all about land management, as the Prime Minister was telling me. Now we will know who owns what. And then it's not for me, I'm not in that, but if you find out that a little clerk somewhere have 10 houses worth $20 million, well, that's for somebody else to check that out. And that is what the opposition to property tax is all about. It's not about $200, $300, $400 in property tax. So I thought I would make this crystal clear, because I cannot understand what all this bacchanal is all about. I cannot. And especially when we reduce the tax, they're making more noise when we reduce the tax. They're more vexed. It has to be what is called unjust enrichment and explain your wealth. That's what it is. So let me move on now to the second thing. Prime Minister,
Carry on.
I dealt with that issue.
Carry on.
Thank you very much.
Just be clear.
And I really do apologize for being late, but I had an extremely good reason, and it wasn't personal. So let me go on now to the problems that we face as a government every month. Every month, we have to find at least $4.5 billion, at least. Salaries and wages alone, every single month, cost the government $1.9 billion. That's the first thing you have to deal with. And as ministries and departments, RHAs, we pay all the salaries in the health sector. So in all the RHAs, the government pays the salaries. Pensions and gratuities, that's for public servants and state employees, $250 a month.
Million. 250 million.
Sorry, you're so right. The numbers are so staggering that I left out the million. So let's go back. Salaries and wages, 1.9 billion. Pensions and gratuities, 250 million every single month. Social welfare grants, senior citizens grant, disability grant, social assistance, 400 million every month. Debt service, $1 billion a month. And that's debt service for central government. Debt service for state enterprises, $350 million a month. Tobago House of Assembly, $200 million a month, and so on. And that is things that you must pay, have to pay all them things. You don't have a choice. You must pay salaries. You must pay pensions. You must pay social welfare. You must send the THA their money. And there are many other areas of what we call mandatory expenditure. And then when we finish pay that, we have some other things to pay. Capital expenditure projects, all of the construction projects around the country. Rental and lease accommodation, that costs the government $55 million a month. Our capital program costs us over $500 million a month. Janitorial and security services, $65 million a month. Public utility payments, electricity and water, and I didn't talk about subvention to WASA, that's $200 million a month as well. I didn't call that, you have to pay that. Electricity, telephone and water for the government agencies, $49 million a month. Other essential goods and services, $550 million a month. Interest on the overdraft in the central bank, because we run in an overdraft and we have to pay for it, $80 million a month. Transfers to statutory boards, $427 million a month. Gate, $34 million a month. And so it goes on. I mean, there's so many different
where
things.
Where does the medicines for the hospital fall?
That is under goods and services. That's over $500 million a month. Over 500 million. CDAP alone is burning up about $20 million a month, at least. And all of the pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals are costing us $80 to $100 million a month. That is the medicine in the hospitals you're talking about, are costing us almost $100 million a month. So when you hear this old talk about where the money gone, and the PNM gets so much billions, and this where they spend it, they're insinuating that we corrupt like them, that the government earn all this money in revenue and we thief it. But we're not like them. We're not even close to them. So I have read out all of this for you to understand what we have to deal with every month. And you're talking $4.5 billion minimum every single month. And by the way, Prime Minister, the reason I was late is I had to make sure we pay salaries tomorrow. Okay? That's why I was late. So I hope you excuse me, because I thought to myself, well, I will get buff, but I will get much more buff if I didn't pay salaries tomorrow. So I apologize. Is there anything else you would like me to talk about, Prime Minister?
Thank you very much. You've been wonderful.
Thank you.
Have a seat. Thanks to the Minister of Finance, the longest serving Minister of Finance in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, who guided us through some very unusually difficult periods. But ladies and gentlemen, as we hear have a conversation. You know, one has to understand that the opposition is not there to help the government stay in office. As Pandey would say, they're not there to make the government look good. The government has to look good on its own. So when the government does good things, and reason would say the government looks good, the opposition spokespersons have a difficulty. And that difficulty is how to turn A into B. And then their credibility falls in there. You see, I've been listening recently to opposition spokespersons. And I notice in recent times, every one of them been following the scripted instructions to describe the government as corrupt, even when they're discussing their own internal business. One of them is running for a leader in their party the other day. Curious in development. And when he was asked, why is it you think you need to challenge the leader? He said, because they have a mission, urgent mission, to get rid of this corrupt government. And I noticed in recent times, a lot of UNC spokespersons have been describing the government of Trinidad and Tobago as corrupt. Tonight, I want to take issue with that in front of the whole world. There is no corrupt government in Trinidad and Tobago at this time. The corrupt government was voted out of office in 2015. And as I sit in this chair tonight, I could challenge any opponent, any person to come with facts or believable, useful, truthful information to show where in the 8.5 years that I have led the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, that this government has a scandal of corruption going on anywhere during that 8.5-year period. Tell me, show me, what is it in this government since September 2015 that can honestly be described as the work of a corrupt government? I don't know, tell me. Because this government deliberately set out to not be truthfully accused of being corrupt. So we will not accept from our opponents in the politics of Trinidad and Tobago and their mouthpieces and echo chambers elsewhere that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is corrupt. I've seen it said by persons who ought to know better, who I think know better, in describing the Prime Minister's salary as a tax-free salary. I've seen that in the media in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm wondering how many people believe that. The Prime Minister's salary is public information. The Prime Minister pays 25% of his salary as taxes. So if the salary, I think, is $60,000, I think that's what it is. But I know I pay $15,000 a month in taxes. But it is possible for somebody to tell the population that the Prime Minister gets a tax-free salary. And amazingly, a number of persons will believe it because, especially, where is it coming from? It's out there in the newspapers, it might be on the radio, it might be on the television. You have to inform yourself because present-day technology, AI technology, allows them to prepare me visually, audially, and speak what they want me to say. And I myself, looking at me, might have to ask, is that me? That's what's happening today in today's world. They can virtually prepare you. And remember, this is a country where Cambridge Analytica was born. In the parliament today, There were questions to the Minister of National Security about a government team inside the police service, implying that there are police officers who are accessing information on citizens improperly. You know who is asking those questions in the parliament? The same people who gave Cambridge Analytica all the databases of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. If you don't believe me, go read Michael Wiley's book. Mr. Wiley's book. Wiley is the man who was the engineer, the heartbeat of Cambridge Analytica, writing about their experience with Trinidad and Tobago. And in that book, they will tell you how shocked and pleasantly surprised they were that a government could have done that. Give them the database from TSTT, from TNTech, from wherever else it has. And now you're coming to be concerned to spread rumor about government interception of telecommunication illegally in the police service because you are so concerned about protecting the public's privacy. So you need to be an informed population. You need to know where you're getting your information from. And you need to know what you are swallowing as truth or naked lies dressed up with tomato ketchup and pepper, which you figure tastes good. You are exposed to people who have no compunction in lying to you. We just heard about property tax. Would you believe that that tax, when the Minister of Finance is asking, he doesn't understand why they're behaving so? It is because it worked for them before. In 2015, what was the election campaign? It was Axe the Tax. And it was successful. Now, in 2024, as we are about to go to the polls, they resort to what worked for them, which is to try to incite the population, and that is after they gave a waiver on the said tax, because remember, to give a waiver, the law had to be in place. The law has always been there. It is the law. But coming out of the campaign of Axe the Tax, they did not abolish the law. They simply gave a waiver 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15. In 2015, the Minister of Finance ended the waiver. So the tax became collectible. Had they won the election in September 2015, they would just proceed to collect it because they had said the waiver had ended. So when you hear them talking now, attacking property tax, ask them, how could the waiver have been ended by your action in 2015? Yet all of a sudden, the tax is wicked and is rowdy and is invert and is this. You are just unbelievable. So we decided that it was a good operation in local government reform to collect the tax, hypothecate it for local government, meaning that it is to be spent by local government, to be collected and used by local government. The Minister of Finance will not be allocating it to anything other than local government itself will collect it and spend it on local government requirements. And that is an integral part of local government reform. We have a mandate to do that. We campaigned in that in the general election. We went out in a local government election. They're opposing everything. They oppose this, they oppose that, they oppose the other. We talk to you openly and truthfully and reasonably. And the PNM is in government. And we are in 7 corporations. They are in 7. But they have no problem in voting against a reduction in the amount of the tax. That should tell you how ridiculous they are. You think the tax is onerous. You think it is heavy and burdensome. The government said, okay, we will reduce it. You say, no, leave it where it is. What the Minister of Finance did not tell you. From time to time, you will hear them saying, when you ask them, well, what will you do? Well, we would have reenacted the local government land and building taxes. You know what the tax level is with the land and building taxes that they're talking about that they would have implemented? Is it 6 or 7%? 7%. We are levying the property tax, which is the same as the land and building taxes, just a change of phrase, at 2%. And they are out there misleading the country, when in fact the documentation that they put forward for land and building taxes would have been 7%. But they think you don't know that. They think you will not be told that. And that's why these conversations are for you. Because there's no way they could challenge what I'm telling you here. The facts are there, the documents are there. But they're hoping that you do not educate yourself, or you do not get your information from a source that is credible, truthful, and available. They believe that you will follow the piper, that property tax is wicked, property tax is new, property tax is inbut, it will bankrupt you, and so on and so on and so on. So the government has to treat all of that as a challenge. And it is a challenge. So the Minister of Finance will rise to the challenge and will publish worked examples of what the tax is and how it arrives in the newspaper. And we will take your taxpayer money and we will put persons on the television and on the radio to explain and explain and explain until you understand it. We will not allow you to make your decisions based on lies told to you by the people you elect and people in the media who will not inform themselves or who have their own agenda. We will do that. And I so instruct the Minister of Finance tonight, educate the population on this piece of tax, because it is part of local government reform. And we have a mandate to carry out local government reform. And what they're trying to do is to prevent the government from carrying out the improved mandate that the government has. Well, they could try, but we will not follow the instructions. The same basis, we are now very accustomed to pay as you earn taxation. All of us pay taxes if we are all employed. There's an understanding of the basis on which you will pay that tax if you're an employee earning tax. It's called pay as you earn. Well, we could have a similar description of property tax, pay as you own, OWN. Because if you own a mansion, the assumption is that you have the means to pay a higher tax than the person that owns a shack. How does PAYE work in the country today? You're working for $7,000 a month. Your PAYE is zero because this government reduced it. You pay no tax. That was a PNM initiative. We did it twice. It was 60,000. It is now what, 84,000? And if you're earning $100,000 a month, being a citizen too, with all the rights and responsibilities in the country, you don't get to pay zero. You pay 25% of your earnings. Because the understanding is if you are left with 75% of 100,000, you will have a lot of money in your hands still, and you would have contributed according to your earnings. But the person who is earning 7,000, the tax is zero. That's what a progressive tax is. The principle is you are deemed, and I'm sure it's not every instance that it is true, but you are deemed to be in a better position. And that's why we're saying, if you don't have property, then don't let them harass you about this tax. It is for property owners. And of course, they're saying, well, the landlord will charge the tenant more. Well, the landlord could try that. And if the tenant move out, and you lose 2 months' rent before you get another tenant, you would simply have been penny wise and pound foolish. Because if you lose 2 months' rent at 3,000, yeah, you lose 6,000 because you didn't want to pay $800. That's your decision. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have to ensure that we educate ourselves as citizens and be properly informed as to what is taking place in our country. So on that basis, I will stop here, open the floor. I'm sure many of you have questions that can take us through a conversation of some kind.
And the 2 microphones are here, so do place yourself. Remember to give your name and your community.
Good night, everyone. Nicole Hendrickson, Tunapuna. I just wanted to reply, possibly, Mr. Prime Minister, to your concern about misinformation. So, within the last 2 days, in the media, there have been reports of cases in court where representatives of the government have been seeking to mislead the courts by either withholding information or saying that something does not exist. Mr. PN, if this is what exists in a court of law, where contempt is a charge, what do you leave for citizens who are less schooled in seeking to decipher false information from truthful information?
Hold, don't go yet. You talk about the courthouse. The courthouse, more lies are told in the courthouse than anywhere else in the country. We know that. What exactly are you talking about?
What I'm saying is, well, I think differently. I think in terms of the court of law is a place where the truth is supposed to be told. Otherwise, you're charged.
You're right.
But what I'm saying is, if your representatives are seeking to falsify information.
What exactly are you talking about? What example is that?
Okay, so 2 cases. There's a case where I think the 15-year-old is awarded 2.5 million in charges, which is a foreign national, and the case with Inshon Ishmael. Besides the point of who the awards are, the thing is, in the media, it has been stated that representatives of the government is falsifying information. My case is just the balancing of who and where the information may come from. And if you're asking citizens to then seek to decipher false information from truthful information, where is the example?
Well, let me just say that no person going to the court to represent the state in any matter is encouraged or authorized to lie to the court. No person. So if any person turns up in the court and is found to be doing that, that's a matter for the court. If they are found, there's something called, what is called perjury. So I can't say here that nobody will go to the court and not tell untruths, but there's provision to deal with that. But there's nobody who is authorized to go there and do that. Nobody could say, I am sent here by the state to lie. Okay?
But do understand my challenge is.
So therefore, what I've said about getting your information correctly, it applies to all of us in or out of the court. And that's why the court is there to adjudicate on what is true and what is not true. What is believable and what's not believable. The court is there to adjudicate on that. Okay?
Secondly, very concerned about social issues in the country. I've been a youth activist for a very long time. Thanks. Youth activist for a very long time. And concerned about the possible policing of spaces versus putting social activities where we can then shift behavior change to then ensure that all of us are safe and all of us enjoy this beautiful country that all of us love. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
Yes. Yes. We take the next question on this side.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Give your name and community.
Honorable Prime Minister, my name is Julian Johnson. I'm all the way from San Grande. Because wondering when this conversation is going to reach San Grande. So I've grasped the opportunity to travel from San Grande. I have so much
Well, let me make you a promise then, especially since you say you have so many burning issues. Sometime in the not too distant future, maybe you should have the next conversation in San Grande. How about that?
Well, I will cut my question.
I commit to that.
Well, I'll cut some of my questions short, and I'll keep the rest of the questions for
Well,
some.
ask one tonight and keep the rest for when I come by you.
What I find it strange in this country of Trinidad and Tobago, a lot of people complain about taxes. There are a lot of people in this country. I want to know what the government is doing. For example, you have those vendors there in the system, we call that food badge. You have these people from foreign places who selling gyro. I mean, no, we're talking about property tax, but there are a lot of other taxes that the government has to make an effort to collect taxes from these people because they're making a lot of money. Gyro people, they are foreigners from somewhere in some other part besides Trinidad and Tobago. They are in the system because they have food badge. And I want to know why the government cannot make an effort to have these people pay tax. Like how when you work, you pay PAYE. These people have to pay some kind of taxes. So some system must be put in place because there's a lot of tax the government could collect from these street food people who selling food on the streets. That is one. Another burning issue. I may go up the tax a little bit. I want to go on the firearm issue. I observe certain amendments is being made because it pains me to see the country reach to a stage where people in office and certain things is happening for people to get firearm. Under the regulation, I'm asking myself the question, why no advance is made as yet to create a particular offense under the firearm to curb the corruption, for example. Money is being channeled in a certain way, for example, consultant. They collect money from people who apply for firearm, say they're operating as consultant. And that is the money we're kicking back for the corruption. Why an offense cannot be created under the regulation where any applicant pay any money to any firearm dealer, be it by inducement, and create an offense. So it could put them in a position if any firearm dealer collect any money from any applicant, unless the applicant produce an FUL or authorization from the Commissioner of Police to purchase that arms and ammunition, the applicant will be culpable. They bar them from obtaining or applying for FUL for, let's say, 5 or 10 years. And also the dealer will be committing an offense. That offense should be created under the Firearm Act. Mr. Hines, who is the Minister of National Security, he was a police. So he know what I'm talking about.
Were you a police officer?
Yes, sir, I was a police.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
So I'm saying it's a big joke to me. And that is one of the ways you could curb people from paying money. Because people, I don't want you to talk about that. People pay money and it passes through a certain channel and people get, well, Mr. Prime Minister, you know what I'm speaking about. And I was asking why they didn't reach that amendment yet, and you have technocrats who are lawyers. I am not a lawyer, but I'm a layman. I'm on the street, and I know how the money was being channeled. So that is something you have to look at and amend the Firearm Act to make it more robust.
Okay, you've made your point, and it's a very important point. And I think you've used up your time by the microphone, but let me just say something, right? By the time I come to Santo Grande, we can talk about it again, but I don't want to gloss over it tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the subject that that gentleman is touching on, former police officer, he just told me, is a very serious matter. As he was talking there, I just pulled up something on my phone. It's a piece of the I had to deal with this document a while back, and it's the affidavit of the Commissioner of Police, the current Commissioner of Police, who was sued by an arms dealer and had to put an affidavit in the court. I saw that affidavit after it was put to the court, and there's a little piece of it I want to share with you all. You can clear the mic now, because I won't let you continue on this. But you've allowed me to bring this to the public. It was brought to the public already. and I'm sure many of you here might not have heard it. So I want you to hear it again in the context of what was just said by that gentleman from Sangagandi. And again, it's in the context of, we had a judgment this week by a judge who made some comments about the firearm handling and issue to the population. I simply want to say that that's another matter for another time, unless it is raised here tonight. But we have not managed this country by arming the population. Governments come, governments go. We have not been responding to our problems with crime by arming the population. In recent times, a conversation was spawned in this country, which had the effect of encouraging people that everybody wants a gun and everybody have a right to a gun because it's a constitutional right. Let me say very clearly here, having heard that conversation in recent months, I sought legal advice. The legal advice is there is no constitutional right for any person to have a gun. A firearm user's license is a privilege which is offered to you upon assessment, and the authority of the state through the Commissioner of Police may or may not grant you that privilege. So anybody who telling you about your rights being infringed by not being given a gun, they're wrong. And we had a system of monitoring and adding a number of firearms every year into the country. Hear the story. 2016, there were 81 permits granted to import arms and ammunition in this country. 2016, 81. By 2020, that became 306. 2016, we imported 1,620 firearms, mainly into the hands of, much of that went into the hands of new owners. 2020, that became 64,000. So 2020, it was 1,600. 2017, it was 1,600. 2018, it was 5,000. 2020, it was 64,000. And the only difference between those years, 2016 and 2020, is that there was a commissioner of police who took it upon himself to arm the population in that way, unbeknownst to the government. 2016, we imported 6 million rounds of ammunition. 2017, 4 million. 2018, 2 million. 2019, 8 million. 2020, 57 million rounds. Now, if that is what the policy is, and if that is what is being offered to the population at that rate, we will end up with the kind of problem that the United States has, where they make more guns than we. Everybody has a right to a gun in their constitution, and they're trying their best to survive in a situation where everybody has a gun and a right to shoot everybody else. This has not been our government policy. The government policy has been, you can apply for a firearm, you can be screened, and at a particular rate, firearms were allowed into the country. Because we do not subscribe to the fact that if we give people firearms at will, it is now being said in this country and from high places that once you are not convicted, you are entitled to a firearm. But let me just say to all of you here tonight there are a number of high-ranking criminals in this country who have no conviction because they know how to be a criminal, to evade conviction, because conviction is based on evidence and live witnesses in most instances. So if we are saying, as some people are wanting to say no, if I am not convicted, I must get my gun. Remember, you will then be opening the door to give a right to a gun to known criminals because they're not convicted. The system required that if a firearm was required by any person in the district, that the senior officer, usually a superintendent or ASP, the senior superintendent of that district would conduct an investigation of that person who applied, including talking to the wife of a husband who applied for a gun, to know what kind of temperament he has and what kind of threats he's made to her, if he has ever done so. And that senior superintendent will send a recommendation to the commissioner of police from any of the 10 districts. In that way, the firearm user's license was not centralized to the whim and fancy of the commissioner of police. It was in the hands of a superintendent, a senior superintendent in one of our districts. In this year of explosion of those imports there, the commissioner of police removed that authority from the senior superintendents and brought it into the commissioner's office. And what the law anticipated, that the senior superintendents would have had a say as a group, and the rate at which people were applying for firearms was manageable. From the time it was centralized and popularized and encouraged and made out to people that there's a gun there for you, the system now became a business. So what that gentleman just said there about asking the government to amend the law so that no person could pay any person under any guise for a firearm is an important point. Because what was happening is that people were made to pay in the process through dealers before they had a firearm license. And the dealer would import the firearm even before the person had an FUL. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the basis of much of the corruption that caused a number of persons to be before the court now for corruption in the firearm department. And a number of audits that have been done, and a number of persons have questions to answer about how they handled their job in managing this matter of arms and ammunition. 57 million rounds of ammunition means that in that 12-month period, if they imported as per the permits issued, there's enough ammunition to kill every citizen here 50 times. Is that what you want? Will that make you safer? Because what has happened is that we came to the conclusion that a significant portion of these legally imported items, even in the hands of the state, were taking part in the criminal industry. And that is what we're dealing with right now. That is what we are dealing with right now. Military grade arms and ammunition in the hands of unauthorized persons being used to carry out what they believe are undetectable crime. And of course, if you import that huge amount of volume, you have to import a huge amount of arms to justify it. Because if there are no arms to fire those bullets, the sellers have nobody to sell them to. So the business has been created where you move from 1,600 guns to 64,000 guns. Permits, 64,000 guns. And you move from 1.66 million rounds of ammunition to 57 rounds of ammunition. And I can tell you from the investigations that we have been doing that those legally imported arms, even for state purposes, have been leaking into the hands of unauthorized persons in this country. And I say no more for the moment.
Take the next question on this side.
Observed. I am Kirk the Freitas, and I am from the Mount Hope area. Mr. Prime Minister, as you are aware, crime is a serious issue today. As citizens who has to be on the street, I am concerned how easy it is to get bail for a gun crime. I have 4 clippings which I would like to read as the headlines for you, please. In the news there, on the 20th of February 2024, Ms. Fraser, the headline was, government reveals data for last 5 years. 13,800 get bail for serious crimes. They said here, when it came to violent crime, last year, 24 were granted bail for murder, 143 for shooting and wounding, and 236 for rape, incest, and other sexual offenses. In addition, in 2023, the number of persons granted bail for kidnapping was 88. Kidnapping for ransom, 17. Burglaries for breaking was 148, and 218 for robberies. Last year, a total of 320 were granted bail for possession of firearms and ammunition charges, and 229 got bail for facing charges for other serious offenses. I only have headlines now on for the Express on the 19th of February 2020. I said, gunmen getting bail to kill again, says COP. The Commissioner of Police is scolding the judiciary for what is considered soft approach by defenders coming to court charged with weapons and related offenses. Another one here from Loop News, there was September 2021, said teenage Arima teen granted bail for charges for gun possession. And the last one, bail for gunmen on related gun offenses. Mr. Prime Minister, after reading these headlines, I am sure other law-abiding citizens are also concerned that criminals, especially those on gun crimes, are accessing bail too easily and are back on the streets. Mr. Prime Minister, as head of the National Security Council, while I know it's a challenge, but I'm asking, what can you and your government do to ensure that these repeat offenders don't get bail?
Well, the only thing that the government can do, one, is to influence the legislation in such a way that you make it not as attractive and available as it is. But once the law has been passed, the operationalization of the law passes out from the hand of the government to the judiciary. The government has no role in the court in adjudicating on whether bail should be granted, because the law says that is the option of the judicial officer to whom the application for bail is made. The government has no role in determining how big the bail should be. But as citizens, we could comment, because the judges do comment on what's happening with the parliamentarians and the cabinet. But we could comment on how that and those laws are applied. Because I could tell you as Prime Minister, my eyebrows are raised from time to time. Only recently, I saw a situation of news where 2 persons, they're nameless, so I can't call their names, but 2 persons were apprehended for aggravated violent crime involving a firearm. That goes to the court. And the matter was concluded, so it became news, and we all read it. Aggravated violent crime, gun crime, where the gun was not even handed over or found, and the court put the perpetrators on a bond. I am not happy with that. I don't think you are. But of course, the judicial officer in the court has the right to make that decision. That is what the law permits. And therefore, if the government is going to do anything, the government has to look at it from law. Are we going to change the law to say a judge can't do that? Well, you know, the judges have interpreted the law that the parliament passed to say, you could change the law, but at the end of the day, the law says that the judgment is ours. So to answer your question more directly, there are some things the government can do from time to time in amending the law or introducing new laws. But when it comes to applying the law to the situations, that is entirely in the hands of other citizens who are beyond the cabinet, beyond the prime minister, and beyond the average citizen. Putting gun-toting people on a bond, one has to be parliamentary with the language to describe that. How could you think that that's a good thing? I don't know. How could you see remorse with violent crime with a gun where the gun has not been found? We had an instance, I mean, right now, my biggest fear is not only the bullets from the guns, you know. I'm mortally afraid of fentanyl. When fentanyl was discovered in this country in the possession of a doctor, what did the court do? The court provided a discharge, a slap on the wrist, and time to pay. I wonder then, does this officer know what fentanyl is? Is this officer aware of how fentanyl is destroying societies with better resources than we have? Whole communities in the United States devastated by fentanyl. Young people destroyed in the prime of their life, even before they finish their school age, fentanyl. And somebody is trying to supply it to our children here and go to court and get a pat on the wrist. And that person, being a medical doctor who should know better, and the medical association, whatever the authority that look after doctors, have no interest in the matter. Those are the conversations that this country must grapple with. But of course, blame the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister is a magic man. I'm mandrake. But I tell you, we can pass the laws. You saw what happened with the anti-gang laws. We passed anti-gang laws. The police is telling you it will help us if bail is a little more restrictive. There are people saying no. So we can't eat our cake and still have it. Sometimes we have to tailor some of the rights that we have to treat with the behavior of the society by curbing some of those rights on the part of persons who have abused those rights. And that's where we have to go.
On this side.
Honorable Prime Minister, members of Parliament, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good night to you, sir.
Good night, sir.
My name is Neil Budu Singh, and I'm the president of the Tunapuna Police Station Community Council.
Are you a police officer?
No, sir, I'm a civilian, and I'm happy to say I'm the president of the council, the police council.
Good, very good.
I have been elected for close to 4 years now, since before the COVID. And we in Tunapuna, since back then, started an initiative whereby we engaged, and when I'm saying we are the council, because we do have a very vibrant existing council, vice president, secretary, what have you. And we engaged the business community of Tunapuna in an initiative where we formed a partnership. It took us some time, it took us some doing, but we did get to a place where we wanted to be. We formed a partnership with the TTPS and the businesses, whereby we installed close to 150 cameras. As a matter of fact, we are looking at you right now. We have the eyes on you. I wouldn't disclose where those cameras are, but we have Tunapuna covered. The great thing about it, Mr. Prime Minister, is that we, the business people, and the council has wholly and solely sponsored and paid for this program. We have equipped a room at the Tunapuna station whereby we have monitoring screens, and in real time, we are seeing what is happening in Tunapuna. As a matter of fact, the police, the TTPS, has used this initiative and solved many crimes since it was up and running before Christmas last year. We launched it 2 weeks ago. I'm sure that you would be aware, you are head of National Security Council. Since then to now, Mr. Prime Minister, I have been receiving numerous calls. San Juan Business Association, Hoover Chamber, people in Shogunas, and they are all calling out for this program to reach by them. The TTPS has endorsed it under Senior Superintendent Smith. He got it, we ran with it, and it's now a success. I am asking you, Mr. Prime Minister, to take this initiative because it's a combined where we have close to 400 businesses on board and paying a monthly maintenance on this camera system. So it was not a buyout. When you have a buyout, when a camera goes down, that's the ending of it. The system and the program we embarked on is one where we are paying a maintenance, so that in the event that a camera goes down, within 48 hours, it is back up and running. Because the businesses have a viewing of this, they have an interest in it. The police is monitoring this, they have an interest in it. I must commend the Tunapuna Police Station for giving us the support in this initiative. They have assigned an inspector, they have assigned a sergeant, and police officers that are viewing these cameras 24/7. It is being viewed. It's not being locked away and hide away, and only when they need to get footage, they go back to it. This is being viewed. What I'm saying, sir, everybody comes here and everybody going to come to you and say, crime this, crime that, crime out of control, and everybody keeping score like it's a cricket game. We are here with initiatives and doing something about it. We are here to make a partnership. And I'm asking you here tonight to allow us to join and come under your Security Council. I am willing to spearhead this, to make this a national venture. Now, I know that the Ministry of National Security is at this point installing cameras throughout the country. But the truth is they are installing cameras at junctions, they are installing cameras at highways and ingress points, out points. What we are doing is that we are making up the neighborhood watch cameras. We are making up the close-knit cameras. We are asking, we have 9 divisions in this country. We are saying, let us put something like this in each division that they can look at control, make it easier on the TTPS to access this footage. Because if this is in Tunapuna and something happens in St. Joseph, which falls in the same division, it is easy for them to pick up the phone, call, listen, we have an incident happening at Curab Junction, and I need to know where this car went, what. It is very easy to keep it at a local level. It's something just like local government. We have central government and local government. So the national security cameras will continue to work and cover the highway areas. This initiative that we have embarked on is one that will go into the more intimate areas, the business areas, the actual running up and down.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt you a bit.
No
You get the
problem.
point? Yes.
So, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm asking you to have an audience with us. I myself and my council, we are prepared to work with you, to work under the National Security Council and make this a reality nationwide.
Well,
Thank you for
from what you have, I saw this. Thank you very much for your intervention and thank you very much for your initiative.
Thank you,
At
sir.
least this is a situation where we move, as you say, keeping score to actually doing something about it. And I suspect when we look at the numbers and the cost, that your operation would be considerably cheaper than the state's operation.
Yes, sir.
Because let me just tell the population, cameras, yes. The government went out to put cameras, as you mentioned, in certain way in the country, junctions, crossroads, and so on, because we didn't think it was feasible to try to put one on every street, as you are doing at the local level. When we went out for tenders, the two main bids, one was from TSTT, which is 51% owned by the state, 49% owned by Cable and Wireless. Their bid was $330 million for the 1,000, I think it was 1,200 cameras. The other bid was 80 million. The government went with the bid at 80 million. And we've been installing those cameras, and we just about, at last information, we're down to the last 2 weeks before they're all installed, and therefore they will be there. I'm glad you're saying that we can combine the effort, because clearly your effort, how many cameras you have and how much coverage you have, would not be anywhere in the ballpark of what the government pays to run 1,000 cameras. And even when the government pays that kind of money, because TSTT has the government in court now, making a claim that the government is fighting for cameras that were so good that a head was found below a light post in Port of Spain, a head, a human head. Somebody carried it there because the person didn't walk away and leave it there. That was under a camera. But the camera was so camera that you couldn't tell who put down the head there. But we were paying over $1,000 a month for a camera like that. Understand what I'm saying?
I hear you, sir.
So I am delighted to hear that you have solved the problem, and I'm sure it's going to be a whole lot cheaper, and you have me on board with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay? The government will join you, and that pilot project, from what I've seen in the papers and from what you've said here tonight, it's a pilot project which appears to have tremendous potential. And I'm even happier to hear that your colleagues in the other business associations are interested and willing to participate. Let's do this together.
Thank you, sir.
It's now just after 9:30 p.m. and we have this question on this side.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. All protocols being observed. My name is Desiree de Freitas, and I am here from the Five Rivers, Lupino, Bonnie West District. My question to you, Mr. Prime Minister, is concerning the firearm license application. The question is, what do you have to say about the Commissioner of Police telling the court that she was too busy to deal with a 7-year application?
I don't think the commissioner did that, but I saw that in the newspaper, and I inquired as to what actually happened. What are the facts behind that? Because I couldn't understand how the commissioner could have said that to the court. What I discovered was that the commissioner herself did not put in an affidavit in the court. So that was not the commissioner saying that to the court. But a senior member of the police service representing the police service in the matter did in fact put that affidavit in the court that caused all our eyebrows to be raised. And my concern was whether there was legal support for the police in that matter and who were the lawyers. Turned out that they were in-house lawyers of the police department who would have cleared that affidavit that provoked the judge. Because anybody would have been provoked by such a foolish statement. But more importantly, when the government is taken to court, whether it is the Prime Minister, the Commissioner of Police, or officer like that, there are such serious implications that the government must always be represented by proper, high-level, competent lawyers. Because some other lawyers who make the court a business of knocking the government down are quite happy when a lawyer could settle an affidavit like that and go and tell the court what you just read out there. Okay?
Yes.
So I can't argue with the judge who received that affidavit. Unfortunately, it is ascribed to the commissioner. And that don't look good and didn't make the commissioner look good. And of course, the judge, I think, went overboard in excoriating the commissioner, who incidentally was not personally responsible for that affidavit. It was an officer of her department, but I say she takes responsibility because at least she should have known what was being said in her name. I have been taken to court on many occasions as Prime Minister. Nobody going to court representing me in any affidavit unless I know what is being said there coming from what I am responsible for. So I give that a pass. But as you raise it, I must say though, that it is all well and good for the judiciary to criticize the government. But the judiciary has to be careful that they do not hold it out, that they make policy in Trinidad and Tobago. Under our system of governance, policy is for the cabinet and approved by the parliament. So activist judges who speak as though they could make the policy and guide public servants what to do. I am saying that the government's policy ought to be respected. The government has no policy to arm the population like Gary Griffith has been doing and is advocating in the political arena. A PNM government has a different approach. We get firearms into the population in a controlled and service way, screened, and we are not here about talking about because you have crime in the country that everybody is entitled to a gun and therefore the judge says so. Policy is for the cabinet. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for allowing me this conversation, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much.
On this side, and just a reminder, we need to tighten up on the questions. Yes.
Hi, good night, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Jody Russell. I'm from the El Dorado area, and I am specifically want to ask, well, concerning graduate studies. So I'm a graduate student right now. Students who want to pursue niches, career niches within Trinidad and Tobago internationally because the region doesn't offer these services. For example, me, I would like to pursue neuropsychology. And we only have a few in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm willing to bring my services back here, but I have no support. And it's close to $41,000 I need to raise for my first year of study. I cannot seek scholarship assistance until my second year. Would there be any initiatives in the future, possibly, that graduate students would be able to look forward to study internationally, especially, as I said, careers that are not very much prominent within the country?
It's a challenge. I must say, though, that we do have quite a broad spectrum of support. And at this time, given the limitation on resources, I'm not aware that we could commit to you to expand the program to absorb graduate expenses on the scale on which you're there in a broad-based way. But I am sure that if we look carefully enough at what exists, we might be able to find possibilities to support persons by making minor adjustments. The Minister of Education is here, she would have heard you. And I think that it may be possible for the minister to look to find some kind of program where a small number of people in your situation can have some kind of support at least. You see, if they get support for the first year, you're now literally taking a leap in a swift flowing stream. I get requests sometimes from people in your situation who have actually done the first year, and then they ask for support for the continuing years. And for example, the study, this field of study you mentioned, that specific field, is not cheap. And I happen to know because my daughter has just completed that. She started out with a government scholarship and got into the PhD program. And at the end of the day, it did cost quite a lot of money over and above the scholarship for the family to support her to conclude. So we don't have a government program, a broad-based program, but it may be possible for us to try and find some help if we look at it on a case-by-case basis for a very limited number of persons. Okay?
Thank you very much. I appreciate any help that the government is willing to give, but as you said, it's very costly, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On this side?
Now, let me just say one thing to conclude that piece of the conversation, though. If we do what the young lady is asking, therefore, which is to, as they identify themselves in that way, and we provide help, immediately there are other citizens who would label it as discrimination. Not that the government came to the aid. So we have to be careful what we commit to. But there are some fields of study, for example, I can name one right now, forensic pathology, where all the programs we have, we don't generate enough people showing an interest in becoming forensic pathologists. Maybe it's the nature of the job, dealing with the dead. So if a person comes up who didn't win a scholarship, who doesn't have the money, but they can matriculate in the university, there's nothing wrong with the government saying, okay, we will identify you and work with you and have you graduated. That they did have a program, there was a program like that under the Manning government in the ministry of Mrs. Joan Newell Williams. I think it was called Social Development. When the government changed, that program was presented in the worst possible way, accused of the worst possible things. The students who participated in that program, some of them are now doing good work in the country. They were treated in the worst way, and that program, in fact, has been ended. So it's against that background, I make the comment to the young lady that the government may want to look to see what help we can give, but we are limited against the blowback that comes when you intervene in that way.
Pleasant good night, Honorable Prime Minister.
Good night, good night.
Ursula Mark Kelly from Arima. My question tonight is from being a wrong and hearing words on the wrong. The word on the ground is, and the question that I want to ask.
Who put those words on the ground? That's what you're going to figure out.
From, walking around, being in our community, always have words on the ground. Words
Okay.
always on the ground.
Okay.
Okay, my question is there a police or a SSA hit squad?
Ladies and gentlemen, that is one question that requires an answer. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to answer that question tonight. But what I can say to you is that we have been engaged in recent times in a deep dive through investigations into the state security machinery. And as of today, there's sufficient information to convince us that some public officials who have had access to government equipment and firearms may have been involved in criminal conduct. I can say no more at this time. The investigations are continuing.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you.
Pleasant good night to everyone, Honorable Prime Minister, members of government. My name is Karina Nanan. I'm from the area of San Juan, and I have two very short questions. So the first question, Prime Minister, is about the Piarco International Airport, the case. Did we win the case?
Oh yes, which one? We have more than one.
The really big one.
But that's the one from the Piarco one with Steve. Yes, we won that case. It went to appeal. We won the appeal. There's a court order where the perpetrators have been ordered to repay to Trinidad and Tobago a substantial amount. I think it is in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars. The person who was accused and who fought the matter for a number of years and it came to that conclusion is still in the court. The last I heard of that matter recently was that the court had ordered the person to identify to the court their assets so that the people of Trinidad and Tobago can be repaid as per the court order. That is being challenged by Ferguson's interests, and I dare say by some of his friends here in Trinidad and Tobago. The court has turned down, they made an application to the court recently asking the court to not force them to disclose their assets, but under American law, they have to. So we are at the stage where we are seeking to ensure that the court order, which was made in the favor of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, is carried out. So that matter is actively being pursued at this time. And it involves an award. I can't remember the exact figure, but I seem to think it was in the order of $200 million, something like that. It's a substantial amount of money that is to be returned to Trinidad and Tobago, having deemed to have been improperly removed by persons who could not defend themselves in the court. So we're close to conclusion on that matter. But there's still amount of resistance using the court process in motions and pushback from those who have lost the matter.
Thank you so much, Prime
Thank you
Minister.
very much.
On this side, next question.
Pleasant good night, Mr. Prime Minister. Pleasant
Good
good night,
night.
everyone. My name is Christy Mary Maharaj. I am representing Burnley Athletics. We are one of the many clubs that train at Tacarigua, Etihad grounds. So more or less, my question is what would be done or what are you guys going to be put in place to help us athletes continue and keep up our sporting activities? There are no facilities for us to change. As females, I think that is very important.
At Etihad ground?
Yes. There are no facilities for us to change. There are no bathrooms for us to use. If there are porta potties, it is not sanitized properly, so it is not hygienic. The grounds are a bit rough in terms of there are a lot of sinks, a lot of potholes, so a lot of athletes are faced with minor injuries. So I am here asking for help and assistance for us.
Okay, well, your MP is here. I'll have a chat with him. And with respect to putting sanitary facilities in there, that is something that we could commit to. But the ground is maintained by the regional corporation, right? And it ought to be of a higher standard. And that is where we're saying, if the local government authorities are better resourced in a more on-time manner, things like having a playing field up to standard, where you are having minor injuries because nobody looks at the condition of the playing field, that should become a thing of the past, where your corporation should be able, with having within its remit enough resources to focus on things like that. But I will have something done about the bathroom on that site. And I will also hope that the corporation can try to assist you all. You know, sometimes, you know, it needs maintenance, and the maintenance is just not done. And then it deteriorates to conditions that are even dangerous to the athletes. I would not commit to, from this end, about doing something on the ground, but the Minister of Sport is here and she would have heard you. Your MP is here, he would have heard you. And I would look specifically to see, I know how we can get some bathroom facilities there. We can make a project on that to make sure that you are looked after from that end. Okay?
Thank you.
On this side?
Prime Minister, good night. My name is Mikhail Campbell.
Good night.
From Tunapuna, but don't reside in Lupino, Bonny West. Firstly, I would like to commend the government for the amount of youth initiatives that is offered to our young people of Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, while crime is a major factor, I mean, your government provides a space for young people to still have an opportunity to be good and do good. My question tonight is on the lines of employment for young persons who would have attained their degrees, their masters, and then when they go out to the space of work, they are asked to have 3 to 5 years experience. And the question is, where do they get that from? However, I understand that you have OGT, which offers that 2 years training to assist them. But sometimes it takes 2 years or 3 years to be placed into an internship to get the experience. So I'm only asking, what advice do you have for those degrees and master's holders who are looking for employment within their fields? Thank you.
Well, sometimes you may require to look a little away from your field to get your first opportunity while keeping your focus on what you really want to do. Secondly, you may want to find out what is available in the existing system, because you may think you know, but you don't know unless you actually do a search. There are a number of government programs that cover a broad spectrum. And you need to look there to see where there's something that may suit you or where there's an opportunity. And there are times when you may have to take a little less to be able to wait for your ship to come in. The government can't guarantee that everybody who has a master's degree or a PhD walks into a job. What we can do, though, is create opportunities to hire more people of your caliber. One of those areas is local government reform. The local government reform exercise carries with it the requirement for a large number of skilled people in the professions. We would need more accountants, accounts clerks. You don't have to have a PhD, but have some training that could make you sit into one of those positions. Right? And then if you spend a year or two there, sometimes you may find that you can shift career there. So once the economy is alive and well, both in the public sector and the private sector, opportunities for jobs go hand in hand with that, right? So keep on living your dream, but keep looking to see where your opportunities may exist and see what is available in the current basket of offerings from the state. Because the state can't really undertake to guarantee you a job once you graduate, right?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, 8 minutes to 10. We take the next question on the other side.
Good night. Good night, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good night.
Ronald Makano, Tunapuna. Dr. Rowley, if you're like me, and I realize you're not like me after you quoted your salary. if you're like me and you watch the news nightly, then the expectations and the trauma from watching news and hearing another black boy has committed a murder. And it has to send some shivers through your whole spine, and the unsettling reality of what has happened similar to yesterday with another black boy. Now, consequences are always valid, of course. If you do the crime, you stand the consequences. I have no problem with that. What I'm worried about is that we're not talking about the mental health of our black youth, which involves the effects on families, the effects on communities that are experiencing this serious crime situation. Because for us, there's a paucity of research in the areas of mental health of black youth in the Caribbean. That's a fact. We talk about the lack, we shouldn't be using slavery as an excuse. Just recently, Professor Hilary Beckers used slavery and talked about the ingestion of sugar diet in the slave experience affecting our efficacy to modern drugs. That research was recently done. So what I'm saying is that our young people, we need to meet them somewhere in addressing the issues of mental health. Instances of adultification, for instance, where young girls are being treated older than they really are. You know, hypersexualization, there are a whole set of new issues confronting our young people. And all we're talking about is the crime thing, because apparently it's in vogue for people to take a stance. And if you're talking about Lavantil, you must talk about Bangladesh. If you're talking about Afro children, you must talk about Indo children and the problems that they face. I'm saying that we all agree that the problem of certain crimes, a certain type of people are always surfacing. And therefore, based on that, then we have an issue to deal with. That issue to deal with, of course, is the crime, but there's also stigma. Black youths walking into communities now are targeted, rightly or wrongly, right? They walk into a supermarket, there's already somebody is already reaching for a firearm or reaching for some strategy to deal with them. These are pressures that we're not talking about. How does it affect the school experiences? How does it affect the registration to the programs, the myriads of programs that are coming up under youth development? All these issues are issues to deal with. These are research topics, and we're not getting the output from the universities and other institutions to tell us what the problems are. So what we're doing is be prepared to lose a whole generation by without doing anything. I am saying that we must target a response. Just as we targeting a response to the criminal, we must target a response to our young black people. They need attention at this point, otherwise we lose a whole generation. Mental health, we must make it egalitarian to deal with.
Okay,
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Your discourse is well received, cannot be dismissed, but you did start out by asking me if I thought of the community where this perpetual killing is taking place. I do think about it. And you know where I think about it most? What really is the day like in a family that knows that somewhere in that family, one of them or more of them, a brother, a cousin, a neighbor, is in fact a murderer and was out last night, and you hear the news and you suspect that he was involved. People were killed. He's back in the house. That must be a trauma, even in silence. And the people who are living with that in our country must be damaged psychologically. So your argument is not to be dismissed. And the research is required, and the interventions are required. But unfortunately, a lot of those interventions are protected by personal experience and personal rights and responsibilities. Because given the frequency of murder and violence in our country, it tells me that there are a lot of people close to it and must be affected by it. How are they being affected? Your research that you're asking for might be able to tell us, but certainly they must be affected. And that effect can be manifesting itself in a variety of ways. And if young people are exposed in this way to parents who are traumatized in that way, then that is where the loss of the generation will come. It's like we speak glibly about domestic violence, but we don't tease it out as to what exactly is this domestic violence. Is it the physical blows on the body that a woman is cringing from? Or is it the mental terror that some women face? So we have issues, and research can only help. Thank you very much.
Final question for the night.
Honorable Prime Minister, all protocols observed. Prime Minister, you are the head of the National Security Council. I don't think they pay you enough, and I want to encourage you to continue to have these conversations.
Can I take that?
Yeah. So that over the past few weeks, SSA has engaged all of our minds and again talk on the ground. So I want to hear from you with respect to the investigations and the firings at the SSA. Are people being persecuted for their religion?
No. But suffice it to say that our concern and our investigations to date indicate that people have used religion to conduct state business. There's no country that I know that has more religion than Trinidad and Tobago. And there's no country I know that people are more comfortable in practicing their religion than Trinidad and Tobago. So there ought to be no fear about religious freedom in Trinidad and Tobago. That is not under threat. What we are dealing with in the question that you raised most pertinently is religion being used as a front for criminal conduct. The investigations are continuing and will continue because I don't know anybody of any religion in this country would countenance and encourage religion being used in any way to foster or encourage criminal conduct. And officers of state in the agency that you have mentioned have an extra responsibility to ensure that the question you ask and the answers I give are not necessary in Trinidad and Tobago. Unfortunately, that is not so. The question is very pertinent, and the answers so far are very troubling. Thank you.
In closing, I would just like to commend you. You are the Prime Minister of this country for taking decisions that you need to take for the interests of the country in respect of the election coming up next. And I want to commend you on your government.
When is the election?
Either I'm saying 2025, I hear people saying 2024, but you have been able as a leader to make decisions in spite of the criticism. And I have to big up my Minister of Public Utilities, Marvin Gonzalez. What says a contentious issue, SSA. So the government has had a very busy year, and I think you're mental. I ask God to continue to bless each one of the ministers for serving this country in the manner that you all have done.
Thank you very much.
It's after 10. We'll take one last question on this side.
We have given another 10 minutes, so okay. The minister is saying we can go for another 10 minutes. So
yes.
Put your question. Let's make the most of the next 10 minutes, and we'll end after in 10 minutes time. Okay. Proceed.
Pleasant good night to one and all.
Good night.
All protocols observed. My name is Kern Balfour, and I am a member of the Fitzgerald Hines constituency, Laventille West, and I want to commend the government for the work that have been done in the area of education, because I'm a proud product of this government education system and the Laventille community. I went to Success Laventille Secondary School for 5 years. Then I did 2 years at St. George's College. I went to UWI and did 4 years, and I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics and a double minor in Criminology and Accounting with honors. I graduated in the year 2020 along with Curry Marshall. He did law, I did maths and accounting. And I work with my community. I run a free maths help center in my community, giving back, because I believe in reciprocity. One recommendation I would like to make is two. One, I would like, based on my work in my community and giving back and so forth, I went back and gave back to Success Laventil, give several motivational talks just for the Christmas, November, and I had access to the entire school. I dealt with them in different categories. I was able to, complete a successful program. So the recommendation is that one, for the minister for our Minister of National Security, we would like to see a greater degree of foot patrols in our community. We know Laventil is known to be one of the so-called at-risk communities, and we recognize that many of our police officers are gravitating towards 21st century policing and so forth, and they have the sophisticated jeeps with the cameras on it and so forth. But let us not forget the basics and remember foot patrols is very important. And I remember listening to one of your talk, the last talk that you had down Sando, and that was one of the pointers that you would have reinforced. I just want to echo those sentiments and agree with you that I think more needs to be done in seeing our officers on foot, and I know that it appears to be some of them are reluctant to, but we need a greater degree of effort in that regard. Secondly, I remember in 2020 when it had a massive protest in the Port of Spain area, one of the things that he would have done is appointed a committee to tackle to understand some of the issues that have been grappling, many of those communities, right? What has become of their findings, and has any of them recommended programs being put in place to turn some of our Trini bad artists to Trini good artists and promote them and give them opportunities so that they can see that opportunities are available for practicing goodness rather than badness?
Thank you very much, and congratulations on your own personal success. Big up Laventil. Yes, some work has been done, being guided by that exercise that you mentioned there last, and we're just about to roll out our community outreach program. There are 6 ministers, I think, and non-ministers who are about under the chairmanship of the Minister of Education. Cabinet meets tomorrow morning, and one of the things that I'm signing off on tomorrow morning is the rollout of that community outreach program that will touch on some of the things that you mentioned there, working with the communities and hoping to reach people like you, to encourage you to goodness other than badness. Very soon you will see a program of that nature being rolled out, not only in Laventil. We are picking a number of areas around the country where the need is very prescient, and we will try and get involved. So I hope that you will play a part and make your contributions to them, because you seem to have the aptitude for it. Thank you very much, and congratulations again.
It's now 10:05.
Good night, Prime Minister. All protocols observed.
Thank you.
Esau Mohammed, St. Augustine area. I just want to thank you for giving the citizens of this area an opportunity to have a conversation with you. I think it's been fruitful. It's something that is good for good governance. So I thank you for that. Quick question in terms of, I think you mentioned recently that you may take a brief holiday and so on. Is there any plans in the future? Is that still on the cards? Did you change your mind? In terms, I know the work is hard and we're all human. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shiso. Thank you. I am entitled to a month's holiday every year, but I haven't really been taking it. I've been trying to take it, and I've mentioned that a couple of times, but I think tomorrow I go to Tobago. I'll be in Tobago for Easter, as I've always been. I'll spend the Easter vacation weekend in Tobago. But for the first time in a long, long time, I'm going on vacation on Tuesday. I'll be away from the country, actually on vacation. I leave on Tuesday, and I'll be away for about 10 or 12 days. Please do not destroy the country in my absence. I will be leaving you in very good hands. We have a very experienced cabinet. We have the cabinet will be in the hands of probably the longest acting prime minister the country ever had. And I'm very confident that in my physical absence that all would be well. And of course, my phone is working. I'll be watching them from abroad. So I'm really looking forward to 10 or 12 days. I traveled to Ireland, and I'm anxiously awaiting being there, because, it will really do a lot for me to be away for a few days in what is in effect a vacation. I have not left here to go on vacation for a long time, except a weekend in Barbados now and then, which I always treasure. But going on a 10-day vacation is something that I look forward to. But I'm sure by tomorrow morning you will hear somebody saying, how you could go on vacation, because I really need one. Thank you all very much for asking. One lady, that's the last question, right? Because let's end there now.
Honorable Prime Minister, good evening. I am Janice Armstrong from the community of Rio Claro. My question is very simple. Yes, my question is very simple, but I want to make reference to your speech during the opening ceremony of the Dabadi Malabar swimming pool facility. Right, you made mention that there's a new pool on the drawing board in the community of Bish. So my question is, why the community of Bish? Right, because I am a former national swimmer of Trinidad and Tobago from the Rio Claro community. And given the fact that most of the residents are from Rio Claro and all my swimmers are from Rio Claro, my concern is the accessibility of the pool in the beach area.
All right, why Bish? The reason why we had said Bish at the time was that the representation was made by a person who was contributing to the community in Bish by using swimming.
That's me.
That's you?
But I'm from Rio Claro.
You were the person who with the children in somebody's private pool?
Yes.
So the pool really has to go to Rio Claro then?
Yes, please.
Because, a mistake was being made. Because when that representation was made where you were using, somebody was granting you the permission to use their private pool with all these young people.
Yes.
I did commit to helping you, but
Yes.
I don't know why I said Bish. It was really Rio Claro.
Yes, please.
It's because I thought you were from Bish. And I thought that this was happening in Bish. But if it's in Rio Claro, it was, well, Rio Claro, it was. But that whole conversation started about the community program that you were running.
Yeah.
So if you are Bish, well, then I think the project is going to be Bish.
Rio Claro.
Rio Claro then, okay? That's what it's all about, because there was a representation made and the young people who you were gathering and the person's pool you were using and so on.
Yeah.
I don't know where I got the impression from that it was Bish.
It's Rio Claro.
But
But I just want to add one more based on the number I would have told you back then. We have increased because I have a lot of preschoolers and primary schoolers that want to be able to get on board and use it as part of their education program. So we really need that swimming pool in Rio Claro.
We'll work on it. I know that the preparations are underway, and we'll just shift the geography a bit.
Okay.
It was all my mistake, sorry.
Apology accepted.
Thank you.
Prime Minister, you can wrap up.
Okay. We come to the end of another one of these encounters, and I want to thank all of you who came out to join us here at the location, and thank all those who did pay attention to the program on the radio or television, wherever you are. Thank you very much for your attention. I trust that you would have been educated a little bit in some of the issues that are current, and that you are better off now in understanding what's happening in your country. I did make a commitment tonight to a man from Sangre Grande. So I want to reiterate tonight that the next conversation will be in Sangre Grande. I can't tell you when, but we'll go to Sangre Grande again, because I intend to do this kind of encounter across the country as time permits as we go forward. So thank you for coming. Get home safely, and let's continue to look out for each other. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, and just a reminder, if you have any questions, leave them at
This is TGT Live